Well, gentlemen, as you know, this is the morning that I agreed to answer questions, and so this is recovery question Q&A, hot seat number one. And I appreciate all the questions that you've been firing in the chat to me. And so I'm just going to read the question, and then I'm going to answer it and go to your next question. So just keep throwing them up in the chat, and I'll keep answering. What are some ways to discern the why behind our addiction? Why? Okay, that's a huge question, but let me jump in. It's huge because there's so many different implications. Sometimes the why has to do with soul wounds. I get wounded as a kid, I get vulnerable, and so I'm looking for a way to medicate and deal with my own pain and frustration. So sometimes there's soul wounds. Sometimes it's being uncoached as a young person, because most of you got involved in the addiction as a young man, and so without proper coaching and without proper supervision or protection, like now, parents have a harder time with all the accessibility of the internet, and obviously pornography. It's even harder. But the why behind the addiction is the vulnerability of youth, the poor coaching by parents, poor supervision, maybe soul wounds, and also the powerful dynamic of discovering the connection between masturbation and this huge kick of adrenaline that comes with release sexually, and it becomes in self, it's very intoxicating. You add that to the vulnerability of the adolescent period where the mind is still developing, the brain is still developing. It's so susceptible, and it gets so imprinted by things that are happening during the 10 to 18 years. And so those are some of the whys behind the addiction. If I had to narrow down recovery from addiction to one anchoring truth, what's the most important anchoring truth that you would share with us? Well, I can't tell you how strong I feel this, but the non-negotiable difference that Jesus makes. Now, if you don't fully surrender and let him deal with your addiction, having a notion of surrender to Jesus is not enough. It's an all out, complete, no holds barred addiction where I am saying, "Yep, I'm going to give everything to Jesus." So I need the Lord in my life to overcome this for sure. That's to me the most important anchoring truth. But it's not just a notion of surrender. It's a daily surrender of my life and my addiction to the Lord, where I bring it to him. I don't use a covering of my Christian faith as I'm going to be fine. No way. It's a commitment to really surrender to him and follow what he wants for my life. Uh, Number three, my addiction has caused a lot of hurt and confusion and broken trust in my marriage. How do I approach my wife about some of the character flaws or things that hurt me without, and this is her character flaws and things that hurt me, without giving the perception of shifting blame from me to her? Okay, so first of all, that's a really hard thing, because she can always default, oh yeah, you're going to try to correct me on some things after what you did. Okay, and in some ways she has a right, but the problem is there is something bigger than just my addiction, and it's the fact that we want a good marriage. And so what you might want to say is, listen, at some point down the road, honey, once we've had enough talks about my addiction and its impact on you, I'd like us to step back and just look at how we can just improve things in our marriage. And you can share even other things beyond the addiction that bother me about you. And maybe I can share some things that I think would help us get to a better place in our marriage. And so by addressing the fact that, we need to talk through any addiction questions you have, and maybe, okay, we've kind of done that a lot. Let's take another step back and look at how we can improve our marriage. And so, we can just open that discussion by doing the precursor of saying, okay, anything more about the addiction we need to talk about, because I know I've caused a lot of hurt there, but let's really push beyond just the impact of my addiction, and let's go to even improving our marriage. And what are some things that you think that we could work on, and maybe approach it something like that? In my experience, what's the difference between the guy, in your experience, what's the difference between the guys who can get 2 to 6 weeks clean and the ones that are able to leave it for good? What change did the one make that the other didn't? Great question. So the Relapse Academy is for those guys who still in the back of their mind are leaving some doors open. They are, I got that. I don't worry about that. What happens is if you don't have a proper safety net around all things tempting, all things addiction, you're going to when weak, you're going to go to the weakest spot in the fence to look for something. And you just cannot afford for the first 6 months to a year to have opportunities. And when you do relapse, then you've got to, nail that door shut so that there's no way you can go through that again. That's why when there is a relapse, that's when you got to learn the most, because you've got to realize that there's the addiction itself is what I call insidious. It is sneaky. It is deceptive. You lie to yourself about how well you're doing and that you're okay and that this is not really compromise. But over the next 3 days, you've compromised more and more until pretty soon you're right on the edge of relapse. And so the difference tends to be those guys who take serious to the warnings, put in all the boundaries, look for ways that, okay, so if someone relapses, well, I found a way to get onto YouTube. Okay, then take YouTube off everything. Oh, well, I use YouTube for a lot of good things. Well, you can't for now because you actually use that as an access. Some people, I found my son's, cell phone and okay, well then either put covenant eyes on your son's cell phone or, tell your wife that your son's got to put his phone away or whatever. But too many times guys say, well, I'll do this much when they need to be doing this much. And really understanding your own struggles as to where you're going to struggle. And when you do struggle and relapse, then it's there you've got to look at it. And remember, the tendency is before a relapse, we're not calling each other. We're not saying, help me now. We're not saying I'm tempted now. We're not reaching out enough. So, packing your pride and saying I need some help would be a good thing. How can I stay focused on the recovery work, regardless of my wife's response, whether positive or negative? Okay, so there's going to be times that your wife's response to you and your effort is really weak. Like you feel, well, golly, I should at least get a hand here, or at least a well done, or at least thank you for working so hard. And she gets, yeah, well, good, and walks away. And you're going, dang, that was 3 hours of work I got a 4-second weak thank you for. That's why we use the one, stay in your lane. Remember, she's healing too. She is hurting too. She is struggling too. And you're expecting like she's been in this crazy car accident, call it, and you're asking her, would you help carry the other end of this stretcher? Would you help carry the end of this stretcher so we can get this done? And she's saying, golly, my arm was just dislocated and I've got a busted kneecap and I got stitches here on my left shoulder and you want me to carry a stretcher. So you got to be careful that you don't picture on her that she's all healthy and fine and that your addiction didn't hurt her. So that's why we use the word stay in your lane. It's going to take her some time. Now, do wives need to sometimes be more affirming? 100% they do, but just stay in your lane. How do you accept giving up your sexual addiction forever when a part of you doesn't want to let it go? Great question. So the truth is, remember, every gift that God gives us, sexuality included, is given for our enjoyment. Food, taste buds are there so we can enjoy it. We all love sleeping. It feels so good to sleep. When we're thirsty and we drink, it feels so good to drink. Even sexuality, even using our gifts, it feels good to use our gifts because God wants us to use our gifts. And so this powerful gift of sexuality is a really good thing. But everything that God gives us is good. The enemy tries to pervert. He tries to get us doing either staying away from sex and saying that's noble, or going crazy with sex and everything that moves and unhealthy with an addiction. And that's just as messed up as far as God's plan. You see, it's not wrong to have a desire to have sexual release and a desire for the joy of um, all the pleasure center just firing big with sex. We just have to find it in an outlet with our spouse that is helpful. And so you don't have to let go of the desire to be sexually aroused and released. You need to let go of it being partnered with the addiction side. And so it's kind of changing your aim from being satisfied through the addiction and moving it over to, yeah, and it is a lot harder because it's two people. It's not just, self sex. It's two people, and it's harder to negotiate it. And she has something to say about it, and it was a lot easier when I just took care of myself. But again, it's not against sexuality. It's just refocusing the addiction to something healthy. I don't know if you want to tackle this question or not, but you can choose to ignore it if you want. Not a chance. My question is, do you feel that the church creates a hierarchy of sin and places sexual sin at the top? Or do you disagree with this, or what? I think there's other ones that they put at the top. I think many times they put divorce at the top. Sometimes I think if someone does some kind of sexual acting out, for instance, abusing a child or something like that, whoa, that is really, really up there. Okay. The truth is, we see in scripture that all sin is sin. Okay. Now I have to be confessed that lying about what time I got up this morning by 5 minutes likely would be different than lying to my wife that I was sleeping with another woman last night, though I said I was out in a discipleship group. See, I think there's some differences. Why? Because there are implications. Before God, my lie was still a lie, but the implications are much more extensive. Now, the other thing too is people attach a lot of accusation and judgment to some of these things. And so there's so many people, and I'm going to use the idea of divorce. There's so many people that went through divorce, and now they're couple friends, even though they weren't the one that cheated, and they divorced their husband or wife because she or he cheated on them. But their couple friends really don't know what to do with them, so they don't welcome them the same. And so does the church create a hierarchy? Nah, not the church officially. Do people in the church kind of see some sins as more complicated because there are greater implications? Yes,
Sure.
I think there are. For the married man, what are your thoughts on sexual fasting as a way to reset your neurological pathways when struggling with temptation? Okay, so there's a certain part of recovery that believes in what's called the 90-day fast. That couples, when it's all come out, that you shouldn't be sexual for 90 days as a sexual reset. That's where this comes from, and it's all part of the Conquer series side of things. And you know, Doug would say, well, it might quote unquote help you for a sexual reset, but it may actually be punishing your wife. Because if she is ready to be intimate, 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, you said, no, I can't because I'm resetting, you're actually punishing her. And so Doug and I lean strongly with Doug, that this is an individual thing that each couple has to work through. Now, the danger comes if you cannot be intimate with your wife without replaying. You're going to have to replaying any of your sexual fantasies and all that. It's going to take a while for you to come clean and really be able to be intimate with your wife without the overspray of all your addictive thinking and everything you've seen visually. So first of all, sexual fasting is fine as long as your spouse would be in agreement that you're not actually punishing her. And the idea of reset is actually, can I ever enter into sexuality without the overspray of my many thousands of times of looking at porn images? Can I be involved sexually without that? Well, whenever you go back to being intimate again, you're going to have to fight that. You're going to have to fight to stay present. That's why Doug instructs people when they're trying to come out of this, that you need to have some lights on so you can see the person, that you have to have your eyes open and focused, engaging conversation, encouraging, and that you focus on your spouse during a climax so that you're looking at them, because eventually there will be a stimulus of looking into your spouse's eyes as the focus of your release, as opposed to looking away and thinking about other things. And so as long as your wife is in agreement, She may want to be longer than the 90 days that some people suggest, but also it has to be a discussion. Is there a point in recovery where one stops noticing the sexual features in a woman in public? I have no issues immediately bouncing my eyes and not looking back. However, I love to not notice the sexual features entirely. Okay, so I'm 65, and I just been a lustaholic where I can notice women easily like any of the rest of you. You know my story. I haven't done the porn thing online. And even back in the day when there wasn't online, I had only, I think, 3 times in my whole life where I looked at any kind of porn. And it was, yeah. I don't have a lot of data in my banks from the porn side. But that being said, there isn't a chance that at least at 65 that I don't notice beautiful women, shapely women, women that are well developed or that catch my eye. And there's a lot of things that catch my eye. I'm looking out my window now, and the beauty of Mount Baker catches my eye. I start driving home yesterday. I called my wife and said, "Hey, have a look at the sun on Baker right now." Why? Because it was really beautiful. There's a lot of things in life that I see that are beautiful, and to glance and notice there's an attractive, beautiful lady. That's one thing. But then I make a choice. I make a choice. That is not my lady. I'm not going to violate her. I'm going to treat her as a younger sister with absolute purity, as it says in Timothy. And so I think what happens is I likely don't notice it as sexual as much the longer I've just walked clean, but I can't notice she's very attractive, and I can be drawn towards any kind of the sexual arousing parts of her body if I'm not careful. So that's why for all of us, it's just, to me, the second long look it just can't happen. I glance, I notice attractive, yeah, but I'm walking away from that. Um, Last week in your talk on truth telling, one of the guys in the group mentioned that his number of days of all clear to be a barrier to truth telling. I resonated with that a lot and realized that I was lying to myself about breaking a boundary because I didn't want to all clear and reset. I was close to 6 months, and it's been really hard work. How do you avoid all clear days as an idol? Okay, so first of all, authenticity and integrity has to be your idol. Okay, authenticity and integrity has to be your idol. I want to be a man who's honest. I want to be a man who's upright and forthright. I want to be all clear with you guys on this call. I want to, and I insist on transparency to do that. The problem is without counting days, some guys it just doesn't matter. Yeah, I had to reset. Okay, so if we got 22 days and 16 days and 31 days, we need to be talking about this, right? And you're never going to be beyond the temptation, even at 1,000 days. You're never going to be on the temptation to break that boundary. But what it does is it actually becomes one more boundary. I don't want to go back to 0. I don't want to do that. So not a chance am I going to go there. Now, if you decide, well, I'm going to lie that I've been all clean to keep the stretch going, I really respect those guys that are honest about, look, I need to do a reset. That's integrity. I would prefer integrity than guys, saying they're, 270 days clean, but they've been doing more and more things that are compromising and really require a reset, but they don't want to lose their image or they don't want to blow it with their wife. Honesty, transparency, vulnerability, integrity. There's what you need to be addicted to, and I recognize that there's those people who it becomes the idol that, I'm this many days clean. Well, I would just say let that be part of your strengthening thing, but let not that be the only thing. Covet integrity and honesty more than the number of your all clear. Is it okay or fair to ask my wife to recollect and tell me who she has told about to recollect who she has told about my addiction over the past 2 years and what she has said to them? I think so, because use it from your side. gentlemen, with the dark cloud removal. Um, if you've told our neighbor, if you told your sister-in-law, if you told co-workers, if you told my parents that I didn't know or whatever, I think because I want to be responsible of where I need to make amends. Number one, and number two, I also need to know when I walk into a room who is aware of this, so I know what context I'm interacting with somebody on. Because if I know that Betty and Bob are aware of our struggle, even though I haven't talked to them, I recognize that they're looking at me a little different, as opposed to walking around and Betty and Bob don't know anything about our story, and we're just interacting rather neutral and innocuous, and it's not a threat. So I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job of removing the dark cloud over me by making amends with people. And number two, I want to be able to engage freely, knowing who it is aware and who's not. And you got to be careful when you ask your spouse that question. It can't be, well, can you just at least tell me who the heck you told? Okay, that kind of is a blame thing. Now, she may have told too many, and you're going to have to just deal with that. Because if people come to me, I say, well, look, you need to choose a few people that you really open up to and share with, and keep each other posted on who that is. Great question. How do you help prevent addiction in a young person's life? Is someone ever too young to talk about porn? How do you talk about it in a way that is not triggering? Great question. I have an article that goes right back to talking to 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds. It's called Naked Pictures. You go to my website, and in the search, you just put naked pictures, and make sure you do it on my website. Don't just put it in Google, because that won't be what you need to do. Okay. But basically little kids, being on mom and dad's iPad or being on their phone, they're going to be on different sites, and the naked pictures come to them. And we have to teach kids, when those things happen, when it pops up like that, what should they do? How should they talk to mom and dad about it? How can mom and dad help them at that point? So that's number one. Read about that. Number two is, I have 7 parts. And if you work with youth, this would be helpful for you, not just for parents of young boys and girls. But I have 7 talks on my podcast on how to do the sex talk. One specifically is how to talk to a young person about pornography, how to talk about sex to your kids. And so it recommends that by 9-year-old, you give a pretty thorough explanation about sexuality, and clearly talk about the dangers of porn before they get there, because you want to preload them with the warning and the dangers. You've already talked about naked pictures and how you handle that with dad and mom and stuff. And if you really want specific help that warns the early teen, the 12, 13, 14-year-old, you look on my website for one called Pornified, the top 5 things you tell a young person about sexuality. And so there would be a pretty good way to get started to help a young person. And by the way, when they're young and they haven't really experienced the connection between the visual stimulation and the sexual release, you're not going to trigger them. You're going to just be wise, because you're going to say, hey, listen, the truth is, this is very attractive to us. It's very drawing. And God gave us this desire, to notice these things that just kind of turns on at 11, 12, 13, because God wants us to be connected to a woman and have a family and all. So this is a God-given thing, and you got to posture it as a positive thing. How do you recommend dealing with the outright lies being told to our adult children and her family by my spouse, accusing me of things that never occurred? So if there's a complicated season that you're in with your spouse, and she is saying things that aren't true, and maybe even her family are saying things that aren't true and vilifying you, I think you may need to just say, look, these are the 5 things I'm being accused of. I haven't done any of those. And so I'm going to take a polygraph to tell you guys the truth, because I don't want it just to be my word against your mom's word when she's saying things that I honestly are not true. So I want to establish it once and for all. And so, ask a couple of boys to come with you to sit in on the polygraph. You can just tell to your spouse, like if you're separated or not, whatever that, listen, I want to take a polygraph because I want to put an end to the accusations. I didn't do this and I didn't do this. And it appears that you keep telling the boys I have. So I'm going to take that polygraph to clear my name. I want to clear my name. And so that's the beauty of a polygraph. It allows you to do that. My wife and I have experienced long periods of no intimacy. I'm tired of I can't get the word, but I'm tired of kind of being in bed with her. It feels like sometimes I just want to masturbate to stop. Oh, I'm tired of releasing in bed, I guess. Sometimes I just want to masturbate to stop this release. If I do that without looking at porn, is that wrong? So the question is about masturbation without porn. And so it's a complicated thing. First of all, if you're going to some counseling, that would be a good question to talk through with your counselor about, what's the plan about us re-engaging in intimacy. And we want your coaching and counseling on that. The masturbation as a release to kind of take off the edge. Most of you know by now that I'm someplace around year 4, out of respect for your journey. And because part of the all clear is no masturbation here, I've taken it off my plate as well. And so I'm 4 years plus now, and I'll choose not to masturbate again. So guys, they say, I just can't do without, and I say, well, I don't have the reason, because biblically, it doesn't say I can't masturbate. It says I can't, masturbate looking at a woman lustfully because I've committed adultery in my heart. And so, but I can't say categorically masturbation is wrong because the Bible doesn't say that. But the danger comes for the addict. It's been so connected to self-stimulation and the images of other people and not faithful to your spouse. That would be, where it goes. So you could have a discussion with your wife. Getting a plan long-term of how we're going to re-engage sexually would be good. And sometimes there can be a cooperation kind of in the shower where she might masturbate you. But yeah, I mean, hard question. Yeah, that's the best I can do. Sorry about that. How do you handle grief with integrity? Well, first of all, grief is actually a good word because it means you're mourning the loss of something. And so if grief does its work, you actually recover and get to a better place. Grief is different than shame. You see, but grieving over the fact that you've made mistakes, and how do you handle grief with integrity is just I accept the fact that I've made mistakes. I grieve that, but I want to go on and honor the Lord. So I want to take steps in a direction that honor Him, and I walk in integrity, and I handle my grief as a springboard for greater integrity, rather than a shaming, embarrassment, self-pity thing. Yeah. How do I stay motivated in doing the recovery work when I feel tired and bored of doing the work? Okay, so sometimes we need to review the reasons why. Okay, so just if you go back to porn and masturbation, or porn of acting out in however ways you may have done it, there's consequences to that, and we don't think about the consequences. If you're a single guy, I tell guys, I said, look, I want you to be clean for a whole year before I even will do your wedding. Sobering thought. So if you keep relapsing, well, how would you ever get Currie to, not that I have to do your wedding. I'm just saying that that's a principle I have, because otherwise I'm saying to that little girl, it's okay if he relapses. It's okay. He hasn't really had victory yet. A lot of guys have lied to their fiance saying, oh yeah, no, I've dealt with it, which means it's been 6 weeks since I've acted out. That's not dealt with it. That's white knuckled for a while, and I didn't do it because I know she's going to ask me. So now I've dealt with it. That's BS. That's not dealing with it. Dealing with it is really being clear. And so for a guy who's getting bored and feeling tired of the work, just know that every person, I just sent it out twice to this week. I'm doing some premarital counseling, And in those questions is ask your fiance where he or she is at with regard to looking at porn and masturbating or acting out sexually. Ask the question. Well, I don't know if I want to have my fiance ask that question. Well, that's a fair question to ask. Within the marriage, recognize that here's what you need to picture. When I go to look at porn and masturbate, I need to picture my wife beside me at the computer. I need to picture my kids, my 10-year-old and my 7-year-old sitting here. I need to also picture God just standing behind me here, looking at what I'm doing. And I need to move ahead with a real sense of freedom now. Well, ain't going to happen. So I think one of the reasons when you're getting tired and bored, your commitment needs to be, okay, look, I need to be 1 year clean and I need to do this stinking program. So flip and get your act together and get working on that, because your reasons is I want to actually have a get out of jail card free, that actually proof that I've really done the work. And if you're getting bored, then review the reasons why you want to be clear. Why does God bless some while it seems like God doesn't bless others? Well, first of all, that's a perception thing that we have. It looks like God is blessing someone. Sometimes God looks like God is blessing the people that are sinners and screwing up, and God doesn't bless me. We often feel that way because we ask God to answer certain prayers, and He doesn't answer those prayers kind of like what we thought would be good, because then it seemed like He should answer this prayer because I want freedom like this, right? And so yeah, I think right now God is wanting me to pray like it all depends on Him, but live like it all depends on me. That I will do the work I need to do to put in the steps towards freedom. And so be careful in the perceptual thing. Can my wife? Sorry. Can my marriage fully recover after letting my wife down for so long? Well, let me just say that it might even go past fully recover and get to a place where you've never been. Because when you were living in your addiction and lying to her, you really couldn't be free. You guys couldn't be open. You always were holding secrets. You're always keeping something hidden. And so you couldn't be your best. And so she really didn't know what she had there because you weren't being your best. So the more you deliver a healthy you, the better chance you actually have to get even to a better place than you were before. So that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, and it doesn't mean that she's going to just say this is better and I'm free now, everything's good. But if you put in the work and stay in your lane and do the work that you need to do, walk with integrity, and put a smile on Jesus' face every day, that's the best chance your marriage will recover. It may take some time, but I can tell you stories of men and women who have worked through the recovery, his failure to the marriage. And even she would say, we have a better marriage than we ever did before. Now, he needs to keep walking in freedom, but we have something we never had before. And that's a good thing. What can I do to encourage my wife on her recovery and healing? I understand that it's going to take time, but I can see that she is so close to taking the next step in her recovery healing. And I want to nudge her to take more steps. How would you recommend going about that? One of the best things to do is encourage your spouse to take one of the purge programs, where it's a Friday night, all day Saturday program that myself and a few other therapists will walk with partners on their part of the journey. And it gives implications of what they need to do the work. And so you can say that Dave's encouraging all the men to have their wives attend purge. Would you think about that, honey? There's one coming up the end of May or whatever. So that would be good, because then it's my job to kind of, and the other counselor's job to kind of encourage her in that direction. The truth is, shut up and do your work, stay in your lane, and trust God to do the prompting in her. It's really hard to prompt her what she needs to do. And if you're going to bring up anything, you could share, hey, this is what I've been learning. This is what I did in step 5 or 6, whatever. How's it going for you? And honestly ask, not whether, well, how are you doing in your work? You know what I'm saying? Be careful on implying that, right? Because she's saying, gee, if you hadn't done all this, I wouldn't have to do any of this dang work. So thanks a lot. In my understanding, boys are interested in sex very early in life, brackets 13, could be earlier than that. And nowadays, people get married in 30s. Why did God make us this way when it's supposed to abstain until marriage? Is it like sin in general? We've always fall short. or is just our culture messing up by not marrying at 19? And yes, I still know that people do marry that young or whatever, which I was 19 when I got married. But first of all, here's the complicated thing about it. And remember, I worked 22 years with high school and college kids, and this was an issue we talked about all the time. The age of puberty is dropping down. It used to be 13, 14 and a half, actually, back when I was a teen. And it's been getting, there's kids that are kicking into puberty, which having the sexual mechanism starting to turn on as early as 9.5 and 10. Usually the girls are 18 months ahead of most guys, sometimes even up to 2 years. But if the age of puberty is dropping 13, 12, 11, 10 and a half, 10, and the age of getting married is going up, because we know that, Mary was supposed to be married, and it was thought that she was someplace between 14 and 16 years of age. And that wasn't uncommon to, women would be getting married to a man 18, 19, 20 in the Bible days when she was 16. And so this idea of, sexual temptation might have been from age 13 and a half to 16, which of course isn't a big, well, it's not as big a challenge as puberty kicks off at 11 and I'm getting married. Average age in Canada for men is someplace around 28, for women is 26. And that's all people. And so you're looking at better than a decade, and so there are challenges there, and I just is it just an assumption everybody's going to mess around? Well, no, but it is a hard thing to walk clean and walk pure, and so yeah, I mean. It's one of those things that we have to coach people on. We don't talk open enough about how to face this, and we really need to. And so yeah. As I walk through my own recovery, how do I help my spouse do the same? If I'm doing what I need to do, making calls, doing step work, etc., and feeling as though I'm making progress, but my spouse does not seem to be making the same progress, how do I help her? I kind of answered that already, but you can just be open discussion, discuss how our recovery is doing, and remember, she's only having to recover because of mistakes that you made, and so be careful on kind of pushing too much. And just stay in your lane, lead by example, pray your head off, and again, encourage her to get to purge if she hasn't. If I were to be clean of porn for a year before marriage, could there still be struggles with our sex life? If so, is it best to wait longer and or to figure it out in your marriage? Okay, first of all, people that aren't involved in any kind of porn past still have struggles in their marriage. Remember, first of all, you're not going to understand a lot about sexuality to start being intimate with a person. And secondly, whatever general sex knowledge you do know still has to be applied to your spouse. And so there's lots of couples who struggle. I mean, of all the couples I deal with in marriage counseling, 80% or better, we have to talk about the sexual area, because there's a misfire, there's a mismatch of interests, and there's perception issues. And so if you've been clean for a year, then just go ahead and enjoy getting married and work out the challenges of a sex life with some good preparation and some good good coaching along the way. By the way, you guys are amazing. I got 27 more questions coming, and I'm not going to be able to get to them all today. So I'm so proud of you. I didn't have to go to the other ones that I wrote, even if there was any gaps. So I'm going to just keep firing as quick as I can. I've restarted my start date after last week's meeting. So if I entertain a thought for a minute, do I need to restart? If I do the second look, do I need to restart? Well, see, the problem has to be with intentionality, right? Like if I walk through a mall or walk down a street, I just see people coming and I go, oh my goodness, that's maybe 60 yards away from me. I can see that young person coming has a really, really short skirt or whatever. Let's just say I noticed that from back there. Okay, now I make a choice. And for the next minute, I'm talking to my wife, or I'm looking across at the stores across the street to see if there's any store I need to run over and check on. And as I sense those people going by, I look ahead again. I make a choice. But if I go, oh my goodness, oh, that's a really short skirt coming. You made a choice. So because I would like to say for sure there's not a week that goes by I don't have to make a choice. I likely can't say it's every day I have to make a choice about a second look because I'm often just in my office. But out and about, we're going for a bike ride someplace, and there's people standing at the side of the trail, and dressed jogging and whatever, and I can go, she's in good shape or whatever, and then I make a choice. And so you decide, because intentionality is, you say, well, I didn't really look after her to lust after her. Okay, so why the second look? Now, if you didn't, start shaping, looking at her shape and her breasts and her butt and everything, then maybe you're okay. I don't want to be legalistic, but I'll tell you what, when I choose to look a second time after knowing that's, like, because you can be walking in a mall and you see something that's skin color over here, and you get, what is that? And you look, and it's one of those posters of like a Victoria's Secret. Okay, well, I've seen it. Now I'm not going to go again a second time. All right, so that's what I'd say. Um, why is it that we continue to hear story after story of key leaders in ministry failing morally? How do we shift the narrative so that the trend reverses? Okay, first of all, I hurt with you over this last mess. People don't talk enough about people like Billy Graham, who lived and died, and nobody talks trash about him on any regard. But what happens is everybody is assuming that these leaders are walking impeccable because they got such a platform. So the danger here is there's a life without accountability. There's people that became entitled to greater freedom, and you got to trust me, I would never do that. That's BS. I'm accountable. If I didn't have regroup, I'm still meeting every Wednesday morning for an hour and a half with my accountability partner. We're in our 31st year together, and I had 8 years before that in Saskatchewan. I will never not go weekly with another person who's a no BS accountability partner. He calls me on my stuff. I'm open. I want to be clean. I want to walk with integrity. I want to speak to you with passion because I'm not full of BS in my own life. So that leader that you're talking about is a guy who became above the need of accountability. And he even had accounts where he didn't have to account to anybody what he did with that money. What the heck is that? Who do you think you are that you establish those boundaries that no one dare ask him this because he is this person? No. This person needs to be protected by being accountable. I'll be accountable to all you guys. If you say, Dave, I want you to report in every day to me about your activities, I'll be accountable to all of it. I don't care because I got nothing to hide. I ain't doing anything. So the danger is leaders who get up in leadership have less people that they might be accountable to, and that's foolish. So there's my opinion there. Um, is it predominantly or exclusively a male issue, and why? Um, First of all, there's likely up to 25% of women that struggle with porn as well. It's a lot more private because for some reason in the culture it's a little more shaming. Now, with outside the church as well, if guys can look at, why can't I look at it? But I actually have helped, I don't know, 5 or 6 women through the problem with porn, and just their own addiction. Used a lot of the same materials, but they're accountable to other people. They're not accountable to me, and that sort of thing. But it's predominantly a male issue because there's a pretty direct connection with self-stimulation and release, ejaculation, and really visual. But it can be a frequent habit with women as well. Is it predominantly? It's not exclusively a male issue. Predominantly, yes, and I think because of the direct and easy connection with it. How do I stay in my lane when it's 2 years in and the blame is continuing to be used? Well, at some point, you got to just keep accepting Jesus. I'm going to have to trust you with the healing you need to do in their life. And, there may be some issues that you need to talk through in counseling that maybe needs to come up there. But the default drive to blame was easy because there was reasons why maybe, they weren't trusting you. Uh, but, but, but for sure, um, what do I need to do, hun, so that it it just doesn't come back to always my fault again? What do I need to do? I would just like to get past this place where it's all because of what I did? When can it be behind us? And notice how I'm asking. The tone is as important as anything. So try that. Um, the scripture, we are not to deny each other. Well, yeah, I mean that's 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 3 and 4, and it talks about husbands and wives who are not to deprive each other sexually, so that we're not tempted. But the problem is when a person has been unfaithful through porn or acting outside the marriage, we have healing going on. Remember, it's like your wife has taken a bullet to the chest and she looks up and you hold the smoking gun and you're expecting her to forgive you and just want to come and be sexual to you, and she's healing from this amazing wound that she's received, and you're holding the smoking gun. And so there's a lot of work for her to go with, because if you want to talk about the scripture that says do not deny each other or deprive each other sexually within the marriage, it also says treat your wife with gentleness and respect. It also says sacrifice for your wife like Christ sacrificed for the church. It says control your ways, your body in ways that are holy and honorable, not in sexual lust like the unbeliever who does not know God. And do not defraud one another. Defraud means do not pretend that you're something pure when you're not. And so there's all kinds of egregious mistakes that the porn addict has made or the person who's acted outside the marriage has made that your spouse does need to recover from. Okay. How do you get your wife to jump on board with the idea that doing things for the right reasons isn't a bad thing? What if she views that as you don't really want to do it? Well, first of all, if I waited till always having the want to do something rather than believing it's for my best to do something, I might wait a long time to go in a direction that is wise. One wonderful, powerful statement I've reviewed with many people over the years that I heard when I was taking my counseling degree years ago from Hobart Maurer. He said this: it's easier to act your way into the correct feeling than to feel your way into the correct action. So if you wait till you feel like it, you could wait till hell freezes over 7 times. But if you actually choose to act in keeping with your commitment and with the reasons, eventually the feelings will start to come. And so the idea of doing things for the right reasons isn't a bad thing. I mean, that's why, there's times that I make a commitment to choose to forgive and not keep reminding the person that they're a piece of crap because they hurt me. I'm actually choosing to reapply forgiveness when my thought comes to just get angry at my spouse for what he or she did. And so I do need to choose for the right reasons to do something. And there will be times that I want to, and it'll come. But wanting to is wanting to show love. It's not because of my feelings are always there. Hard question. Should I get my wife's input on my list of amends? Sure. It shows respect. Honey, what else do I need to do to make amends? Here's my list. Anything else you can think of? Because I just want to be thorough and you know me best. And so I'd love your input. So I would say good with that. Is trust something that can ever be fully restored? Or is it something that it always maintains a scar? I think what happens is there's always a scar, but there's no hurt anymore. Because there'll always be a trigger that your wife will in time just kind of blow off the trigger and it doesn't really hurt her anymore. She's not necessarily reacting. But like for instance, the traumatic event that happened. Let's say I was in a car accident. Well, for the first maybe 2 months or even longer, anything close to that, I kind of tense up, right? I tense up. But pretty soon I've gone through many instances like that, and I no longer have that tense up feeling. And I realized that there was other things going on that were similar to this look, but I did what was right, and the accident happened, and so I think the idea that trust is something that is based on my integrity and my walk and my intentionality with my spouse, and but the reality that the hurt is back there, it doesn't carry the weight the same over time. Um, if you're feeling one edge and feel like you're going to freak out, on edge, and you feel like you're going to freak out at the little things that make your blood boil, and you can't figure out what is bugging you. Okay, so first of all, if you're starting to get the freak out feeling and you're going to lash out or you can't figure out what's bugging you, then be careful on being in a situation with your spouse where you're going to just indiscriminately blow up or let her fly and say and do hurtful things. You may want to just say, honey, listen, I need a 10-minute walk here, or whatever you need to do to just try to get perspective, and even calling one of your wingmen and saying, hey, listen, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just feeling tense inside. I haven't even figured what's going on, but I just don't want to blow up with my wife. And so you can take time out yourself. You can try to sort it out in your own head. You can call a partner. And I know that sometimes when I'm a little bit complicated, I sometimes even tell my wife, look, I said, not that it excuses behavior, but if I'm a little impatient or short tonight, I had a real hard afternoon with some of the situations I counsel, and I'm just carrying a little weight of it. And it doesn't give me excuse to say or do hurtful things, but I just want to convey understanding. So if I do need to have a timeout for myself, so I don't hurt the people in my world, that I'll do that. Uh, so something about if a man's wife who doesn't want to have sex for 2 years. Well, I think that there's an open discussion that need to be had between husband and wife about how do we rebuild our sex life. And so I do think that yeah, I mean, just because you've had addiction doesn't mean your wife hasn't had hurdles, and that these hurdles that you have brought into her life haven't brought up her own hurts that she needs to deal with. So a 2-year gap is pretty complicated. But I deal with men. There's lucky men in this call who've had a 6-month or 1-year gap of being intimate, or even longer. And so we're not advocating that, but we can't push our spouse. Make sure you turn off your mics, guys. But just I'm not advocating pushing your wife, but also there needs to be a discussion at some point, and usually better with someone else involved. How do you deal with the fear of messing up? I know my cycle, and I fear any day I could fail. I don't trust myself. So the greater fear of messing up, the more you got to be accountable. One pastor friend of mine, that when he was in these tough situations like this man has just implied, he would check in these tempting moments every 15 minutes to get through this season. And so you need to remember, okay, what strengthens me the most? Whether it's worship music, whether it's reading scripture, whether it's talking to a friend, whether it's going for a run, you need to do that. And we can't be driven by fear. We have to, okay, what are my reasons? And go back to your recovery work and those sort of things there. Okay. Gentlemen, you are completely delightful. Completely delightful. And I'm just hoping that those shot of questions that you had, fabulous questions, by the way. I'm really appreciative of your honesty. I'm just so encouraged by the questions that you have. And so that being said, we'll likely do this again. So I'm going to turn off the video now, and then we're going to break up into groups. And while I'm breaking up in groups, Cam, today, why don't you just lead any further discussion, and I'll just turn things off.